What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Hear Me Out podcast and Frank Analysis. I'm your host, Franco, and I have a very special guest on for the second time, Dennis Potvin. How are you doing, Dennis?
I'm doing great, man. It's a beautiful, cold, sunny day here in Tennessee.
So Dennis has been itching for a debate. So you want to tell us a little bit more about that? What is the debate all about? What do you want to prove to people in this debate?
Well, what I was hoping for, and I know a lot of Tulsi-crats were hoping for this, was that the race would come down to her and Bernie Sanders. That's what I was hoping for all along. And as Tulsi dispatched one person after another, like Tim Ryan and Kamala Harris, and she attempted to with Pete Buttigieg and Elizabeth Warren in the debates before they finally just shut her out. They finally found out, well, the best way to keep her from knocking people out in the debates was to keep her out of the debates, right? That's pretty simple. So we never got that showdown that I have been itching for since March of 2019, which was to finally see Tulsi Gabbard go after the big boy himself and expose all of his lies and all of his corruption and fraudulent behavior. And I'm not talking about Joe Biden. I'm talking about Bernie Sanders. And I was waiting and itching for that to come down to this summer, but it never happened because of the pandemic, because the media and Bernie himself buried her at the end and said there's only two candidates left. And so she really had no choice but to step aside, stay in Hawaii, throw very milquetoast support to Biden, and get out of the election. So we never got to see that. So what I wanted to do was say all the things that she didn't get a chance to say on a debate stage. And I personally went on Twitter and challenged the biggest Bernie Bro cheerleaders, whether it's Katie Halper or Crystal Ball or Kyle Kalinske or Anna Kasparian, any of them, to step forward and debate me one-on-one. And I just wanted to share with America all the things they don't know, they never learned about Bernie Sanders.
Would you also consider debating people who are proposing that Biden is a better option and that we need to vote for Joe Biden over Donald Trump? You've been telling us, like me and Israel of Big Talk, Little Talk, that Donald Trump is actually the better option. But you're sort of in the gray area, correct? You don't know whether you're going to vote for Trump or whether it's going to be third party. You're not sure yet, right? But you're for sure certain that Donald Trump is better than Joe Biden.
Yeah, because let's think about why Trump won. The reason Donald Trump was able to take power in the Republican Party, in which he had very little experience, right? He'd only been a Republican since 2011 when he started the whole birtherism thing, right? But the reason that he was able to take power, and I'm going to put an asterisk thing before, I know what everybody's thinking. Yeah, but he didn't keep the power because he invited the whole swamp right back in with him. So I get that part. But let's just talk about 2015 and 16. The reason he had a chance to emerge and beat 17 candidates on the debate stage was because Mitt Romney lost to a black man with a Muslim name. A guy who had already been in power for 4 years. The fact that Mitt Romney couldn't beat him, even with the Boy Scout Paul Ryan as a sidekick, the fact that they could not beat Barack Hussein Obama in 2012 is exactly why Donald Trump was able to emerge in 2016. And the only way for a Tulsi Gabbard or an Andrew Yang or somebody good to take power in 2024 is for Donald Trump to win again in 2020. So don't get me wrong, I'm not rooting for Donald Trump because I don't like him. I think he's a buffoon. He's funny. He's a character. He's a bullshitter. I get it. But if he doesn't win, then we have no chance of getting what we really want and need in this country.
Yeah, so it's sort of, you're proposing that Donald Trump is the shortcut to get the things that we want done, whereas Biden, we're going to have to wait a long time in order to get it. And that's sort of the argument that I was making and that other people were making about Hillary Clinton, that if we voted for her, then it would be eight more years of neoliberalism and people would fall back asleep like we did under Obama. So do you think that we fell asleep under Trump, or do you think we were more awake now with a Donald Trump presidency? And you think that there would be more people that will awake if Joe Biden loses to Donald Trump?
Well, you know, the great thing about the Republican Tea Party movement was that the entire party seemed to be united in opposition to Obama, right? Mitch McConnell even said when Obama was elected, my goal is to make him a one-term president. Now, at the time, McConnell was not the Senate Majority Leader. Harry Reid was. I believe McConnell didn't take power until 2014, if I'm not mistaken. But he said the Republicans were very singular in their vision, and that is, we're going to make him a one-term president. But the Tea Party came along and said, oh, it's much worse than that. The reason he took power was because the weakness atop the Republican Party. So the Tea Party really took over, and that's what we saw here in Tennessee. We were a blue state, but the Tea Party takeover in 2010, our entire legislature flipped. The Republicans won back the governor's seat that Bredesen had held for 8 years. And so there was a takeover of the Republican Party, and then they were entirely united in their attacks against Obama. And now they had some strength, because now they were winning those state legislative seats, they were winning the House of Representatives, and then they won the Senate in 2014. So now Obama really became an ineffective president. He became a lame duck for really his last 4 years, but especially his last 2. And that led to the takeover of Donald Trump of the Republicans in 2016. Of course, they acquired full government that year as well. What's going to happen if Biden wins the presidency is that, yeah, we're going to fall asleep, because the majority of the Democratic Party that supports him and just wants any blue will do, or, you know, vote blue no matter who, they'll think they won something because Trump's out of office. But I guarantee you, if Biden wins the election in 2020, the Republican take back over of the House in 2022 is going to be ugly. And in 2024, a ticket with Nikki Haley on it will steamroll the Democrats. So what we need to do is just say, look, let's concede this one to Trump. We'll keep him in power. We know he's really not going to do anything, especially with the Democratic House. He's not going to do anything bad. Hell, we blocked him for 3 years during Russiagate, really doing anything other than giving tax cuts, right? So as long as we keep Trump in power, progressive movement can still simmer and build. But good luck doing that if Biden's in charge, because you got no leverage then. We've already won the White House. We're the neoliberal centrist. So what power would progressives have? You wouldn't have any.
I think that the perfect person for you to debate will be Vaush. He has been proposing for former Bernie supporters to vote for Joe Biden, and that we need to work with the current system that we have. And I believe he's also been suggesting that Bernie Sanders is a better candidate than Tulsi, even though Tulsi's his second choice. But yeah, I think that he's the perfect person for you to debate. And because I don't think Katie Halper or Crystal Ball will, they're most likely going to ignore us. I don't think they're the debate kind of people, but Vaush, he claims to be a good debater. So would you accept a debate with Vaush?
I'll accept a debate with Bernie himself. I'll debate anybody, anytime, anywhere for nothing. Just like Mr. T said to Rocky Balboa, I'll fight you anywhere, anytime for nothing. And that's what I would do, because I feel so strongly about this, about my position on this. And nobody's going to make me waver on it.
All right, people. So you heard it here. Dennis is willing to debate Bernie Sanders himself. Vaush, if you're willing to debate Dennis, I'm here. I can moderate that debate, and we will put that message out there for people to see and to help promote this upcoming debate that we need to have. So I want to talk to you about that Nick Branya thread that he put up. I believe it was sometime last week or 2 weeks ago, where he just exposed so much corruption that happened within the Bernie Sanders campaign, not just from 2020, but from 2016, and why he was not surprised with what ended up happening with Bernie Sanders. He talked about how Jeff Weaver was pressuring Bernie to take billionaire money in 2016, and he said that the most disappointing part about it was that Bernie and Jane seemed to have been almost like they were about to do it. Like they were about to go for accepting money from billionaires, given what Jeff Weaver was telling them. So what would you say about all the stuff that Nick Brogna has been saying on Twitter, and how Jeff Weaver and Chuck Rocha are now, they now have their super PACs? What would you say about all that?
Yeah, I think what he said was going to happen in 2016, we now see is happening now. Not with Bernie starting his own super PAC and taking billionaire bucks, but his surrogates are. We see Chuck Rocha just started one. Now we see the Squad is starting one.
Yeah.
They're basically saying, hey, we can't go into a war without ammunition. The Republicans obviously have far more money than we're ever going to have, so we have to take money from billionaires. And as long as it's for our crusade or our revolution, right, our baloney revolution that will never happen, then it's good money, right? No different than a billionaire giving money to their local synagogue or their local church, right? So yeah, they're freely ready to take the money. And what's happening is some of Bernie's biggest fans in independent media, like Fiorella Isabel and Jimmy Dore, these are folks that pretty much kept it suppressed for all of 2019 because these stories weren't coming out. Now they're starting to see the light. And they're starting to see things that I was saying last summer, which is, look, this guy is a warthog that is telling you he's a lion, and it's all fake. I keep saying on Twitter, people say, will you quit saying he's a fake, phony fraud? That all means the same thing. I'm just trying to get people's attention. And that is, this behavior has been going on all this time. Just because he says he doesn't take billionaire money doesn't mean he doesn't want to or wasn't ready to. He was absolutely ready to. Just because he says he's a pro-peace and love candidate, he wasn't. His whole time in the House, he built up the military-industrial complex. He voted on every bill you shoved in front of him that supported imperialism and military spending. He voted on all of them. So much so they called him Bomber Bernie. Mm-hmm. He was a friend of the military-industrial complex. But again, when the warthog says, hey, everybody, I'm not a warthog anymore, I'm a lion. Everybody goes, lion! He's a lion now because he said so. But that doesn't make it true. And if you do your due diligence, like these reporters are finally starting to do, they realize that this runs deep. And the thing is, like Michael Tracy told Jimmy, war is going to come out. This isn't going to get better for Bernie. It's going to get worse. And I'm there for it, man. I'm ready. Oh, I can't wait for everybody else to learn the things that I already know.
So how did you know all this about Bernie before it got more exposed until recently?
I retweeted a tweet from last August. I don't know if you saw that, but it was a video that I said to Bernie. And the fact that he was not sticking up for Tulsi, I think it was the September debate she was getting canceled out of. And she had to go on guard duty, and she couldn't campaign for a couple weeks. And I basically laid it out that, hey, Bernie, you can't stick up for one woman who gave everything for you politically 3 years ago. You won't stand up for anybody. And your history is you don't stand up for anybody. And my nephew was a big Bernie Bro supporter. Went to rallies, fundraised for him, knocked doors for him, right? Well, when Bernie decided to get in the race last March, I called him and I said, so you excited? Bernie's in the race? And he goes, no, I think I'm going to support this Andrew Yang guy. I said, Andrew Yang? I said, why wouldn't you support Bernie? He's like, Bernie's a bullshitter, that's why. We all found that out when we shut the lights off on us at the convention.
Oh, right, yeah.
And then he started to talk about the emails that he got, the fact that when he got to hotels, they couldn't get a room, the fact that they turned sound alarms on when their people were up talking on the stage, the fact that he didn't get Nina or anybody else on the platform committee, the fact that he went all in for Hillary Clinton and fundraised for her and went on a 37-city tour for her. He just started telling me all these things. And the last thing he said to me was, the only reason Bernie got in the race was to stop Tulsi. That's the only reason. And at first I thought he was full of crap, right?
Yeah.
But with every passing week, I am more convinced that he knew what he was talking about. And can I just share a story with you about a local election here?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I ran for House of Representatives in 2018, and I lost. Well, one of the folks that I met on the campaign trail called me to ask if I was going to run for the state Senate seat here this year in 2020. And she said, hey, I just want to know, are you going to run for the state Senate seat? And I was interested in running for it. But I said to her, I'd really rather not, because I got burned so bad by the Democrats here in Tennessee in 2018. And she said, well, if you're not going to run for it, I will. But if you are, tell me and I won't. And I'm going to tell you something. That is a conversation that goes on in every district, in every town, in every state in America, every election season. And that is people saying, hey, you and I agree on 90% of our beliefs. If you're going to run, then I know I've got a horse in the race. I'll sit this one out. But if you're not going to run, tell me and I'll run. And that's the agreement she and I had. She said, well, if you're not going to run for it, I will. And I said, you got my support? Let me know when you want donations. I'll give you $100. Okay? That's the way it goes. When you have somebody who represents your values already in the race, you don't run against them, right? You say, hey, I'll support you. But if you're not going to run, tell me and I'll run, right? This happens everywhere. So why did Bernie run? Tulsi was already in the race. Elizabeth Warren was already in the race. Why would Bernie run?
Yeah.
He had no reason to.
So sorry to interrupt. Your nephew was he went to the convention then, and I guess after seeing Bernie's behavior, he had this gut feeling that he was trying to stop Tulsi. And how did he know about Tulsi? Is it because he remembers her stepping down and endorsing Bernie, and he followed her ever since?
Yeah, because Tulsi resigned as the co-chair, the vice chair of the DNC in 2016. Went to war immediately with the Clintons. Said, I'm not afraid of the Clintons on national television. And she supported Bernie. And Stevie remembers that very vividly. And he remembers Tulsi on the campaign trail with Bernie. And he knocked doors and gave all his time and money and energy to this, went to the convention, and he saw that Bernie did not stick up for them at all. And the question that he asked, same question that Israel asked, is we were begging Bernie to endorse Jill Stein and get right the hell on out of here because he's not a Democrat. He had no reason to support Hillary Clinton. He took no pledge to support Hillary Clinton. He could have endorsed Jill Stein. She was the one who was the closest to him politically. And if he had supported Jill Stein, then we would have all followed him. We would have all voted for her. And she would have got more than 1.5%. But he didn't do it. He jumped right on the Hillary bandwagon, which fooled all of us that the only reason he was there was to make sure that he had all of us corralled and then pushed us right on to her range. And that's exactly what he just did this time.
It seems like he, at the time, I didn't like his decision on him endorsing Hillary Clinton, but I could have understood that if he was planning on running again in 2020, then he probably did that so he wouldn't get smeared so much in the news and say, oh, look at him, he's not a real Democrat. Why would we let him run again to be a Democrat in 2020? It's his fault that we have Trump as president now. So I kind of understood that. But it just continued. In 2020, his lack of standing up for his supporters and the grassroots just continued. He put so many people in his campaign as staffers who had ties with Center for American Progress and other establishment candidates. And it all reflected in his performance. I mean, he kept calling Joe Biden his best friend and other establishment people his best friend. And then when it came to Andrew Yang and Tulsi, he would ignore them or I mean, when they would get smeared, he wouldn't stand up for them.
Nope.
So it really reflected, and it's like what Jimmy Dore has been repeating over and over again in his videos about what Chris Hedges said when he had was it a phone call he had with Bernie? They said that he doesn't want to be seen as like the Ralph Nader of the new Ralph Nader.
Right.
So he cares more about his rep then and about how people in his inner circle see him than he actually does about, you know, the movement, about the revolution.
Yeah, Jimmy brought it up. And again, Jimmy was shining Bernie's shoes all of 2019. And even though he was clearly in Tulsi's corner and ultimately voted for Tulsi and still really feels terribly about how she was treated and how her campaign had to end, he was still back at Bernie. Bernie was still a close second to him and Steph, and was still first to, you know, Ron and that other whack job they have on. Who's that other one they have on there?
The guy you could probably debate also, Graham Elwood.
Yeah. Graham Elwood, yeah. He's just a psychopath. I'd love to debate him. That'd be over fast. But Jimmy was shining Bernie's shoes all of last year too. He just recently, since about Super Tuesday, or since when Bernie was going on network television and telling the whole world that the race was down to 2 candidates, even though Tulsi Gabbard was still in the race. He said it 4 straight shows with Chuck Todd and Tapper and George Stephanopoulos. He said the same thing, and he said it in a rally the night before. We're down to 2 candidates, everybody, me and Joe. Right there. Those are bald-faced lies, just as bad a lies as Joe Biden's ever told, because he was erasing a female candidate, a female combat veteran from the race, actively lying to suppress her. How is that not just as bad as anything Joe Biden has lied about? Mm-hmm. They talk about Joe Biden lying about Mandela. Bernie Sanders has lied about everything. He has lied to people about Medicare for all. And I'm glad Tulsi called her plan single payer plus, because we got to get away from calling it Medicare for all. Because when people hear Medicare for all, they think Bernie Sanders. People don't like Bernie Sanders. 3/4 of the country would never vote for Bernie Sanders. So we need to stop tying him to that program. So Tulsi was smart. She went back to calling it single payer. But he lies about that. He tells these young people who don't know how Medicare works. Medicare is not free. It's never been free. It never will be free. There are co-pays, deductibles, premiums, out of pocket. You have all of that with Medicare. So stop saying that Medicare is free at the point of use for everybody. It's not here. It's not in foreign countries. It's not anywhere. It's a brand name, just like Kleenex, just like Band-Aids. Medicare is a brand name of an actual program that exists today, and it's not free. But Bernie lies about it to try to get young people to follow him. And let's go backwards, where this all started with Bernie, okay? In 1988, he ran for U.S. House, and he got smoked, okay? He has continued to run as an independent. He's won 15 elections in Vermont between his House and Senate seats as an independent. You know why he runs as an independent? Because he knows he'd get primaried as a Democrat. Mm-hmm. And the agreement that he made with the Kennedy Institute in 1989, after he had already got smoked, was, hey, I'm going to keep running as an independent because it's easier to get elected in Vermont as an Indy than as a Democrat to a U.S. seat, which is why I like their governor right now, Republican, right? It's just easier for Republicans to win national elections in Vermont. So he said, look, I really need to keep running as an independent in order to win, but we'll have a wink, wink, nudge, nudge agreement that you don't back any Democrats who run against me, and I'll make sure I snuff out any other third parties that would run against me. So basically, I'll caucus with you and I'll agree with 100% of your legislation, which he does, but I'll run as an independent. Mm. Well, he got and it worked. He won. In 1990, he got elected to the House. He was in the House 16 years, then he switched and ran for the Senate. So he's won all these elections as an independent. Well, he figured, I'll do that as a presidential candidate. Oh, wait a minute. I have to run for the Democratic Party ticket because third parties just can't win in this country. So he says, okay, I'm going to run with the Democrats. But because he's independent, he's basically killed all the third party candidates like Jesse Ventura Why do you think Jesse Ventura didn't try to get in the race a year ago? Because he knew there was no room for him as long as Bernie Sanders is there. Because Bernie's going to grab all the independents he can. So that's why Jesse didn't get in the race until it was down to 2. Then he talked about getting in the race. Because he knows Bernie's going to kill them all the third-party candidates. So Bernie's been doing this sneaky, I'm an independent, but not really. I'm really caucusing with the Democrats to keep himself in power so nobody will run against him in Vermont. But the people of Vermont are figuring him out, which is why in a closed Democratic primary, half the voters there, and it wasn't a lot. I mean, there's only 600,000 people in the whole state. That's as many as we have in Nashville. In a closed Democratic primary, half the voters voted against Bernie Sanders. Why? Because he's done nothing for the people of Vermont for the last 30 years. He's done nothing. Not one thing that he campaigns for has been done in the state of Vermont. They don't have $15 minimum wage. In fact, they don't even have $11 minimum wage. They don't have free college. They don't have a jobs program. They don't have Medicare for all, single payer. They don't have any of that stuff. Free tuition, tuition reimbursement or medical debt reimbursement. They don't have anything that he's ran on. So why would you vote for him?
Yeah. Seeing everything that happened in 2020 about Bernie Sanders and reanalyzing his behavior in 2016, and myself coming across the article that you were talking about by Will Miller, discussing why he ran as an independent for all the reasons that you just explained, which is also in the article. I think it was for the best that Bernie Sanders didn't win, because it could have been the same argument that people have been saying about people falling back asleep if Hillary was president, like how we were under Obama. I think we would have fallen back asleep under Bernie, and that we would have thought that everything is okay just because we have him as president. So I think it's probably for the best, and to help people evolve and to be more critical about the people who they support, because you shouldn't put your candidate ahead of your principles.
Do you think Bernie was ever in this race to win?
I think genuinely he did. He was trying to win. He probably thought he could get some progressive policies passed by working within the system, which those tactics I don't agree with. He was using words like, "Oh, I'm going to be organizer in chief," but that wasn't reflected in 2020. So what about you? Do you believe that he actually was in it to win?
No, not for a second. I believe what my nephew Stevie said. He was in it to block Tulsi Gabbard right from the beginning, which is why he never acknowledged her, which is why he never asked the DNC, "Hey, I want Tulsi on the debate stage," which he'd just done for Martin O'Malley 4 years before, when Martin O'Malley wasn't going to be allowed on the debate stage. Bernie Sanders tweeted out to the world, "Hey, I believe all of us should be on the debate stage." Never did that for Tulsi Gabbard. She was only in 4 debates. He was in 11. The 7 debates she wasn't in, he never once asked for her to be on that stage. Never once. When Hillary Clinton went after her for being a Russian asset, the first people to step up and defend her were Andrew Yang, were Beto O'Rourke, were Joe Biden, for God's sakes. And finally, Bernie was on The View, and Meghan McCain shamed him into saying, oh yeah, she's a good friend. And then he later tweeted that she's dedicated herself to this country, she's a good kid and all that. But then he went on for 5 minutes to talk about how much he loved Lamar Alexander, which was my Republican senator here in Tennessee. He gave Lamar Alexander more love in that interview than he gave a woman who resigned from her DNC seat to support him in 2016. That's what kind of scumbag we're talking about here. What I cannot believe, even though I'm glad Jimmy's, seeing the light, Fiorella's seeing the light, Kim Iverson's seeing the light, what I cannot believe are these cheerleaders like Crystal Ball and Katie Galper and Anna Kasparian, who continue to shine his shoes even though he has exposed himself over and over and over again as being an enemy of the progressive movement, as being a sheep herder to keep third parties out of races, to give all of that $400 million to the establishment and all the votes, like he did in 2016, like he's doing right now. And they can't see that. And that drives me nuts. Every time Crystal goes on Rising and talks about, you don't have to vote for Joe Biden. It's not too late. You can still vote for Bernie Sanders. Yeah. She just did it. Again, a couple days. She needs help, man. She needs hypnosis because she is still propping up Bernie Sanders. Bernie is Joe Biden. There is no difference. You don't believe me? He just voted with 95 other senators for that stimulus package. He voted for every military measure for 16 years in the U.S. House of Representatives. And he didn't vote for the war in Iraq, but by God, he voted for everything that led up to it. He voted for the building of bases in the region. He voted for the arming of militants. He voted for the Libyan regime change. He voted for everything. Don't take my word for it. Look it up on ballot media. He voted for all of them. But then, 2015, he said, okay, I voted against the Iraq war. I'm the peace and love candidate, so, vote for me. He's the warthog who all of a sudden is a lion, right? Because he said so.
I would say Joe Biden is far worse. Bernie Sanders at least raised consciousness for people about the systemic problems in the country, although he was not the person who was going to fight against that. And I was holding on hope that he was going to work with Tulsi Gabbard, and that the reason why he wasn't saying anything is because he didn't want the media to bash him. Of course, that didn't end up happening. Remember, I don't know if you've seen, there's an article talking about how Bernie met with Tulsi and other people like Susan Sarandon secretly, and that's why people thought that he was working with Tulsi secretly. And then there was people in his campaign though that didn't like Tulsi. So I don't know.
I bet they did.
Yeah, it's the same people that loved Elizabeth Warren. So yeah, Bernie just wasn't the fighter that we thought he was. And we need to move past Bernie Sanders now. It's time to move on. It's time to recognize that the only person that's going to save you is you. You got to get active. You got to do your research and see who's really on your side, who's a politician. Right. So it's time for people to recognize that. Don't hold your hope for these politicians.
Yeah, and people say to me, well, Tulsi endorsed Biden too. Okay. Tulsi Gabbard did a 5-minute video. I believe it was March 17th. I think it was after the third Tuesday round of voting. And by then, Biden was up 300 delegates. And now the coronavirus had people on lockdown. And so she did one obligatory 5-minute video where she said, voters have chosen Joe Biden. The voters have spoken. They've chosen Joe Biden. I'm going to support Vice President Biden. And as she said with Jimmy after that, I'm supporting him over Trump. So she fulfilled her obligation, right? That all of them, when you're running for the Democratic Party nomination, you had to sign that in several states that you would eventually do that. Okay. Has she sent out one fundraising letter for Joe Biden? No. Has she done a live stream with Joe Biden? No. Has she sent out my donor information to Joe Biden's campaign? Nope, I haven't gotten one call. Has she asked me via Twitter to vote for Joe Biden or support Joe Biden? Nope, not at all. Bernie Sanders has done every one of those things tenfold. So when I see Tulsi get canceled, and even by Jimmy a little bit, because he's not really mentioning her a lot. But when she gets canceled, remember Annika Spring was doing her victory lap?
Yeah, I couldn't stand
that. On Bernie, right? Bernie has become Biden's chauffeur, for Christ's sakes. But Tulsi, she did a 5-minute video. So let me ask you this. If I went back like Men in Black, and I just took that little red thing, and I made everybody forget that little 5-minute video that Tulsi gave, right? What else is there to signify that she is supporting, endorsing, voting for Joe Biden? What is there? Nothing. Is she in those Unity video ads? Nope, she's not in there either. So you're telling me that a year's worth of campaigning and her life's work has been undone by a 5-minute video? Is that what you're saying to me right now? That's why we don't look to her as the future of the progressive movement, is because of a 5-minute stupid video that she filmed in her backyard?
Even before that, people just didn't like her because she wasn't Bernie Sanders. They thought that, oh, she's stopping Bernie Sanders from winning. Same thing with Andrew Yang. And that the argument that you and I and Israel have been making is that that's only making the progressive movement smaller by ridiculing Yang and attacking Tulsi Gabbard and buying into the mainstream media smears, even though when they smear Bernie, you attack the mainstream media. And it's something that we need to, well, not me because I wasn't doing it, but others in the progressive, quote unquote progressive movement, they need to meditate on that and learn from it so that we can actually win going forward. Because how do you expect to win if you're so easily going to be influenced by your confirmation bias? Yeah,
and I still say that every moment that she had for that year, when she stood up against military-industrial complex, when she called out Hillary Clinton, when she questioned the other candidates like Harris and Elizabeth Warren and Pete Buttigieg on the debate stage on national TV, which Bernie Sanders didn't do. Bernie Sanders attacked Bloomberg for being a billionaire. That was it. What policies did he attack him for? Maybe stop and frisk and for being a billionaire, right? Mm-hmm. Who called out the Democratic Party? Who went on national television and said the Democratic Party is no longer the party of, by, and for the people? Tulsi Gabbard said that on national television. When did Bernie Sanders ever say that? Mm-hmm. So if you're going to cancel her like she's not the best candidate we've already got for 2024, and I'm hoping she goes back to Hawaii and runs for governor in 2022. I told her I'll give you the first $100 check for your campaign. That's what I hope she does. But there is not a better candidate out there. There wasn't this time, and there isn't next time. She is the best presidential candidate of my lifetime. And what pisses me off is, like you just said, all these progressive warriors on independent media thought the other guy was a 78-year-old, just came off a coronary, who's done nothing but lie and steal $400 million in donations, so give it all to Joe Biden. You think that guy's better? I don't know where your head's at, man. You know, when Crystal and Kim and Kyle were like, okay, we got to stop messing around. You guys got to vote for Bernie. We really need you. Don't vote for anybody else. Vote for Bernie. Quit messing around. Not in a million years. I wouldn't have voted for Bernie for dog catcher or Montgomery County. So hopefully Bernie just goes away forever, and we'll have Tulsi as our progressive candidate for 2024. Because right now there's nobody better. There's nobody who has shown me through her actions that they're better than her.
So before we move on to the next topic, I do want to ask you what kind of solutions would you give people who consider themselves to be a part of the progressive movement?
Well, like you were talking about, there's other candidates out there, and what we need to stop doing is, and a lot of people in indie media were guilty of this, stop canceling people because they aren't 100% your purity test. Mm-hmm. We've got to stop doing that. People like you and I have always been fans of Andrew Yang, right? Do I like his foreign policy? Nope. Do I like his kind of switching off Medicare for all, single payer? Nope. But he brought an idea to the table that no one was discussing.
And now everyone's talking about it.
Right? Nobody knew what UBI was a year and a half ago. Nobody ever said that. He brought that conversation to the table. We have to say he is a valuable candidate because he brought something to the table nobody talked about. And so quit canceling him. You know, you might not like Jay Inslee, but Jay Inslee had an issue that he was running on, climate change, and by God, that was the issue he wanted to talk about. So don't cancel him just because his healthcare is different than your God, Bernie Sanders. Like he's the Bible, right? He's the gold standard of politicians. He's not. He's the worst of them. He's the worst of them because he lied to you all these years about what he really stood for. Jay Inslee was genuinely into climate change. That's what he wanted to talk about. He still is. So don't cancel him. So, and the same thing with Tulsi. Tulsi was aligned 90% with Bernie Sanders. But what did Kyle Kalinske say in every single video? If you go back and watch him, every single video where he talks about Tulsi, he starts off with a disclaimer. Now, there's a lot of things I don't like about Tulsi. There's a lot of things I disagree with Tulsi, right? He says that at the beginning of every single video. Stop doing that. Stop using Bernie as the gold standard, guys. Get him out of your head. You got to get hypnosis or therapy. Do whatever. Get Bernie out of your head. He's lied to you for 5 years. He's a fraud. Move forward and think about who can we win with. An Andrew Yang, Tulsi Gabbard ticket right now would destroy either of these candidates.
There you have it, folks. Dennis's solution is to cancel culture. To move beyond cancel culture. Nobody's going to be 100% right on everything that you want, but at least they're going to be genuine. And the thing to remember is that if they're on, how do you know they're on your side? If they're anti-establishment, they're on your side. Okay, they're not going to serve the corporations if they're anti-establishment. Because if they receive more money from the people than they do from corporations, who do you think they're more likely to serve?
Yeah.
And then if it was the other way around, who do you think they're more likely to serve? They receive more money from corporations, they're going to do favors for them. So now the next topic I want to talk to you about is about the Hill and sort of expand on our discussion that we had on Big Talk, Little Talk about Kim Iverson exposing how, well, not exposing, like it was always there, but just raising people's awareness and reminding them that the Hill is corporate news. So what are some things you've been noticing after seeing that tweet and also discussing that with me and Israel and Charles Anderson of the Independent Report? What are some things you've been noticing about the Hill? The Hill's The Rising specifically.
Well, Kim Iverson is a very valuable voice in independent media. And to sound like Kyle, I don't agree with her on everything. But I did agree with her on this. And that is, she kind of said as a reminder, and it kind of came out of left field, but she saw what you and I see, what we talked about on Big Talk, Little Talk, which is, man, it seems like the Hill Rising, like every segment is bashing Biden. I mean, bashing him mercilessly. They have not one good thing to say about him. Mild critiques of Trump. Sager going after anybody who says they're a libertarian. And no discussion whatsoever of third-party options. So Kim Iverson threw out there, hey, just a quick reminder to everybody that the Hill is corporately owned and they are Republican. The owners of the Hill are GOP, tried and true. So just when you're watching all of their content, just keep that in the back of your mind. And I hadn't really thought about it. I started watching that show when it first started, and it was a lot of fun because there were so many candidates in the race. And to be fair to them, they covered most of them. There were some they didn't like, rather, they always bashed Pete Buttigieg, and they were always skeptical of Elizabeth Warren a little bit. Definitely they were not on board with Joe Biden. But they genuinely supported Andrew Yang. They had Tulsi Gabbard on more than any other candidate, and they were very good to Tulsi. And so that's why I started watching the show. Yeah. Because he was on their show all the time. And obviously Bernie, right? So Kim Iverson bringing that up kind of made me look back at what they're doing and maybe what their agenda is. And then it became glaring. It was like a neon sign all of a sudden. Especially
like coming out of the Matrix, right?
Really, really. Yeah. Instead of seeing the ones and zeros, I could see the girl in the red dress all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And then I thought, okay, why are they letting Crystal just completely shine Bernie Sanders' shoes? Every single segment. Even when it has nothing to do with Bernie Sanders, she name drops him. Every time. Every segment, she name drops Bernie Sanders. I mean, she is his biggest cheerleader. I don't know if it's a daddy complex like Jimmy called it, or, when Jimmy Dore is talking about this media who are lying about AOC and Bernie, he's talking about Crystal Ball. Make no mistake. He's talking about DYD and Crystal Ball. That's exactly who he's talking about. Because she'll just come up with the craziest stories to pull Bernie and elevate him. And I'm under the belief that the whole Tara Reade thing, with Katie Halper and Crystal Ball being the biggest advocates for this, was because Bernie was losing. And they wanted to save him. They wanted to throw him a lifeline, and this was their way of doing it. They're going to mercilessly bash and smear Biden and lift up Bernie, who at that time was in the tank. And I don't see any reason, other than that, why Katie Halper and Crystal Ball would just latch onto this and they won't let go. And if you don't believe me, ask yourself why they won't bring on a single guest to debate this subject with them. Michael Tracy's begging to go on the show. Michael Tracy's on Twitter debunking this whole thing every day. They won't let him anywhere near that show. Why? Because they have a GOP agenda. They have a Republican agenda. Yeah, Sagar, it's clear he's a Republican. I met Sagar at Nashville Politicon, awesome guy, and I love him. He does a great job. His segments are fantastic, and I would love to see him get his own show at like Fox. Can you imagine him leading into Tucker Carlson? I'd watch that.
He used to work there.
Yeah, I'd like to see Sagar on Fox ahead of Tucker. I'd watch both of them. But right now, they're going to prop up the GOP. So how do you do that? You prop up Bernie Sanders, the most divisive figure in the Democratic Party, that only a third of the Democratic electorate are going to vote for. But keep propping him up as a way to divide progressives in the mainstream, right? Secondly, you attack Trump's top opponent mercilessly. At the beginning, it was Kamala Harris. They attacked her mercilessly. Then it became Pete Buttigieg. They attacked him mercilessly. Now it's Joe Biden. So who are they going after? Every segment, every day, is Joe Biden. And who does this serve in the end?
It serves Trump. And another thing I noticed is that we need to keep in mind that Republicans are much better marketers than Democrats. They know how to pull people in, and what they used is, they used Crystal Ball, and they used certain independent media pundits like Jimmy Dore or Sam Cedar or some of the other big names on YouTube, and just bring them in as guests pretty much like every day. When I first subscribed to The Hill, it was because I liked what they were saying, and I liked how they were bringing in people like Kyle Kalinske and Jimmy Dore. At the time, I liked Tim Black. I don't anymore because he revealed certain other things about himself. But once they reached that bigger audience, because when I subscribed, I don't think they were even at 100,000 subscribers. Now they have over 400,000 subscribers. I think now they're approaching 500,000. They don't need to rely on guests anymore to build a bigger audience. Right. So were they really for propping up these independent voices, or were they just using it as a marketing tactic? I think. Yeah, go ahead.
I think they built the foundation of their show on Bernie supporters and Tulsi supporters, but now it's Republicans watching the show. I would guess that there's really no other explanation why their viewer. Remember, they were between 100 and 200,000 for a while, but then they just exploded.
Yeah.
After the campaign was over, after the primary was essentially over, they're just gaining thousands and thousands of subscribers every day. I guarantee you they're Republicans because they're bashing Biden in every segment. So now they're getting the Fox News audience in there. Crystal made a couple appearances on CNN to, again, prop up Bernie, right? And Sagar went on Tucker's show, I think, once or twice. But I would guess that their first 250,000 subscribers were mainly Bernie, Yang, and Tulsi supporters. And now it's Republicans. Because they're basically doing all the Apple research Trump ever wanted. right? They're not doing research; they're commentators, but you know what I mean. They're basically helping Trump get elected every single day with another segment tearing down Joe Biden. Well, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? So if they're an enemy of Joe Biden, they are a friend of Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And their owners want them to be a friend of Donald Trump. So I think that to an extent, Crystal Ball was the useful idiot to them because she was popping up Bernie just nonstop, which helped divide the Democrats. So that helped Trump. And now they're attacking Biden, and that helps Trump. So in the end, and think about this, and I hate to admit this, but you know how they say Republicans really like Tulsi Gabbard? And people are like, my God, if Tulsi Gabbard switched parties, she'd be one of the biggest politicians in the country. If she became a Republican tomorrow, oh my Lord. I mean, she'd probably be running for president in 2024 as a Republican. Who the hell have on more than any other candidate?
Who?
Tulsi Gabbard.
Right.
And where else did Tulsi Gabbard go on all the time? Tucker Carlson.
Fox News. Because
she went on. Right.
They give her more fair coverage than MSNBC and CNN. And
oh yeah,
Nico House raised that argument too, that if she could run as a Republican, that would be a big middle finger to the Democratic Party, and the Republicans would also be giving a middle finger to the Democratic Party, because here they have a woman of color who's so popular, and you know the Republicans were able to do it. Meanwhile, the social justice warrior Democrats weren't able to do something like that. Instead, they bashed her. But do you think that they would let Tulsi Gabbard? Would they prop her up if she was a Republican?
Oh my God, are you kidding? If Trump wins re-election, I'm pretty sure he will. Trump wins re-election and installs Tulsi as the ambassador to the United Nations, or God forbid, makes her Secretary of State. Holy smokes! I mean, that would really start it. And her popularity, because here's the thing, the Democrats had a female combat veteran and woman of color with nothing but a progressive record of voting. I mean, let's put it this way, she and AOC have, 97% the same voting record, right? But yet she has this enormous appeal with independents and libertarians and Republicans. And what did they do? They buried her. They kept her off debate stages, they silenced her, right? They kept her off mainstream media. I mean, Morning Joe had her on in March of 2019 and never had her on again. Even though she ran for president for a year, they never brought her on again. How many times do they have Mayor Pete Buttigieg on their show? Every week? So, if Trump says, you know what, I'm going to throw the middle finger for you. Because let's not forget, Trump said nicer things about Tulsi Gabbard than Bernie Sanders ever did. Trump said it in a rally, and they cheered her, uproariously cheered her. When he said, I give a lot of credit to Tulsi Gabbard for voting president, and the crowd went crazy. Can you imagine if Trump said, I have a new running mate I want to introduce to you, and Tulsi Gabbard came on the stage? The crowd would erupt. It'd be like WrestleMania. And it would be the ultimate middle finger for her to defect to the Republican Party. She'd probably be our president in 2024 as a Republican. And I'm not saying that as a stretch. I think she really would. But here's the thing. She would never do it. And it's that doggone aloha thing. You know, I think Tulsi's very stubborn, and she really wants to reform the Democratic Party from within. She always said she wouldn't run as a third party. She fell in line and gave that support to Biden. It's too bad. I don't think she would ever do it. She really believes that she's in the right position, the right party. So it's maddening for people like me who would love to see her in office, in a higher office. But back to the Hill.
Yeah.
Like I said, I think the world of Sagar. I think he's an honest actor. He comes from a good place. He's a populist. He knows what's wrong with the Republican Party. He knows why the Tea Party took power. He's very critical of George W. Bush and his administration. He doesn't like everything about Trump, but he gets it. He gets why Trump's in power. He gets why things are the way they are. Crystal's a dishonest actor. She's just a Bernie cheerleader, through and through. She has been for 5 years, and every story she tells is from the angle of, I love Bernie Sanders.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we don't have to vote for Joe Biden. I mean, that is her angle every single second. And normally she just comes right out and says it.
So I do have two questions that I want to ask before we close this off, and that's the first one is, do you think the GOP would also try to silence Tulsi since they do serve the corporations and Tulsi is fighting against the corporations? She's an anti-establishment candidate.
You know, here's the thing about Republicans, okay? Republicans are about three issues. You and I have talked about this before, right? And that is guns,
Yeah.
abortion, and immigration. Those are the three issues, right? Tulsi Gabbard has never said she wants to scoop up everybody's guns. Tulsi says is actually very strong on immigration. She believes in having strong borders, right? And when it came to abortion, she went right on the show with Dave Rubin and said, I believe it should be legal, safe, and rare. And so she signaled, and she was against third trimester abortion. So right there, with those three policies, she's got 95% of the Republicans, and she's a very religious person as well. I mean, this is a woman who was out singing Christmas carols on Christmas Eve and got attacked by TYT for talking about the birth of Jesus. TYT attacked her for talking about this is Jesus' birthday, and TYT removed that video where they were criticizing her for pandering to Republicans, they said, because she talked about the birth of Jesus on Christmas Day. They removed that video. Go look for it. You won't find it. So right there, she's agreeing with 95% of Republicans right there. There are three key issues that are important to them. I'll be honest with you. As long as you agree with Republicans on those three key issues, you can sell them anything. She could sell them single-payer health care. I don't think any Republicans can say, I don't want health care. I want Anthem and Broadpoint and Blue Cross Blue Shield. I want them in charge. Nobody's going to argue with her about health care. She's going to talk about ending regime change wars. They're going to agree with her. As long as she's willing to go after terrorists the way she is, and she is, they're with her. $15 an hour minimum wage? No, I don't want to make more money. My wife makes $11 an hour. No, I'm a good man. 11 bucks an hour. They would agree with Tulsi Gabbard's platform position because they know where she stands on the three that are most important to them. So I actually don't think they would silence her.
Yeah, wow. A lot of questions were just raised in my head when you talked about all that. I would like to discuss more about that, like with you and I guess also with Israel, if he's interested in the subject, because that can be a whole video all on its own.
Yeah.
And the last question that I had was, what do you think would have happened in the Hills to Rising if Bernie Sanders was the presidential nominee and it was Bernie versus Trump? What would that have looked like with Crystal and Sagar?
I think you would have seen Sagar start to talk about Bernie the way we are now. I think there would have been a little bit of a clash between the two, because obviously Sagar is going to try to keep his party in power, and just like he's doing with Biden, right? And now you see Sagar, and it's disappointing to me that he's getting caught up in this. Every other tweet from him is about this Tara Reade thing too. So he's kind of falling in line with Crystal on that stuff. That's disappointing to me. But I think if Bernie was the nominee, Sagar would start going after him a little bit and talk about the things that I've been bringing up for the last several months. Crystal would be asking why all of the other Democratic voters are threatening to, take away delegates from him at the convention, or when they ask the candidates, should the person with the most delegates be the nominee, and they're all like, well, I think we should let the process go through with itself, right? And that just set Crystal's hair on fire, right? She just, I can't believe they would go with the process that they used in '68 with Hubert Humphrey, that they've used before, and they will again. I never thought Bernie had a chance to be in the nominee, so I didn't think about it. Not even after he kind of won the first 3 states, because I knew he was going to come to the South, and I knew he didn't have any support in the South, because I live here. So I knew that this is where the wall was going to stop the Bernie train.
Mm-hmm. All right, Dennis, any final words you want to say before we close this off?
Well, I heard that Israel is building a network.
Yeah.
And you're going to be part of it. The Frank analysis is going to be part of that.
Yeah, that's right.
Along with Charles and Israel, and that sounds pretty cool, man.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that, about this network that we're starting with Big Talk, Little Talk, and the Independent Report. And if Dennis ever were to make his own channel, you'd also be part of it. Anyone else is welcome to the network, as long as you're willing to be consciously and open-minded about working with people with different viewpoints, and as long as you are not owned by any corporation. So thank you guys so much for watching, and have a great day, and don't forget to stay informed. Thanks for watching that segment of Hear Me Out. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell down below so you can get the latest on sports, pop culture, and progressive politics. Stay informed.